Hey, this is Simon Scriver.
And this is Nikki Bell.
We are running a virtual fundraising conference on November 19th. It's called Fundraising Everywhere, and you can find it at fundraisingeverywhere.com.
There's some amazing speakers that we've got lined up for you. We've got some names on there that you will be familiar with and some speakers that you may not have heard before, but all of them will be sharing amazing fundraising methods that are proven to work, and they will be teaching us how to do that in our own charities.
We've tried to make it really affordable for all organizations, but for small charities, it is completely free. So go look at it at fundraisingeverywhere.com. Register now. Join us. It will be accessible, it will be affordable, and it is amazing.
Yes.
You're listening to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, non-profits, and more.
This is Simon. I am at the end of my holiday. So here is guest host Julia Worthington.
Welcome to Simon Scriver's amazingly ultimate fundraising superstar podcast. As you know, Simon is away at the moment and he's got various guests on. So I am this week's guest. My name is Julia Worthington and my business is Amber Coaching for Fundraisers. I coach people in all aspects of fundraising, whether that's about personal development, which might be about confidence or performance, or better development within their organisation. But I also coach people on aspects that might be strategy or corporate fundraising. So today I'm going to talk about corporate fundraising, and it's a big area I get asked about by smaller charities, so charities that have an income of less than £1 million. So I thought, who could I have as my guest on this session? And so I didn't have to think for long, because Amy Hinks, who I've worked with in the past, works in an organisation that has income of £100 million at the moment. I think this year they might break through, and Amy can tell us a bit more about that later. But Amy is development manager at the Booth Centre in Manchester, and she's been there for 5 years. She started there in financial year 2013-2014, and over the last 5 years has really developed their corporate income, so that in 13-14 it was, well, actually I'll let Amy tell you. So Amy, thank you for joining me today.
Hi Julia.
Hi. So I was just about to say how much your income was when you joined the organisation and what it is now, but rather than me telling everybody, why don't you tell them what the figures were and the percentages in terms of corporate and non-corporate?
Thank you. Yeah, I will. It's really nice to actually look back and reflect, to be honest, because I think you don't often get a chance to do that. You kind of just keep going year on year. But looking back at when I joined the Booth Centre in 2014, the income was 498,000, and a high proportion of that was 75% of that was restricted income from either local authority funding or from grants from trusts and foundations. And now just the year just gone was 965,000. So we obviously really proud of that growth. But I think what's interesting and what's significant for the way the organisation works is that we've been able to diversify the income streams, so that the proportion of unrestricted income has now grown to be about 75%, as opposed to what it was back when I started. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
That's amazing growth in terms of your non-restricted income. So was that a deliberate thing to change that structure, change those percentages?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason that my role was created with the organisation. Prior to that, we were quite a small organisation. Our founder and CEO had done all the fundraising, which is absolutely amazing. She'd done everything. But in order to reduce the risk, local authority funding is always in threat. It's always in decline. You never quite know how much you're going to be allocated. And in order to stay true to your vision and mission. I think it's really important that the organisation itself has complete control over where the income comes from, and you can only really have more control over that if you're diversifying the income streams away from restricted funding areas. So my role was created in order to bring someone in who could concentrate on the unrestricted income streams, and to help reduce that risk.
So a lot of people who do say a lot of bid writing would see working with corporates as being quite risky, because if you're bid writing, and I'm not a bid writer, or going for commissioning, you've got a clear idea of what they're looking for, what their parameters are, the outcomes and the outputs they want, how many people they want you to work with. So that can feel quite secure because you know actually what you're being asked for. So in terms of risk, how can you sort of help people feel a little bit more sure about that risk element?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one, and you've just kind of got me thinking, really. And I think the reason that I've felt that we could take the risk and drive forward the growth in these areas where others may feel that it's risky is that I have complete belief in the vision and mission of the organisation. And I think that when I invite people to come and have a look at what we do and what our plans are going forward, that I don't find it difficult to say, fund us, fund this, rather than fund this specific project, or fund this thing that we want to try, or this thing that would be project that we've been doing for a few years and need to continue. In my work, I'm generally kind of just saying to people within businesses that we work with, I believe in this place, and this is why I think you should. And I don't know if that answers your question really, but I think it's because I'm passionate about the cause I work for, but I also have full belief in the fact that the vision and mission still stand when they were created back in 1995, to sort of help people have a good quality of life and access to safe and secure homes. That still stands today, and I think my role is to go out there and to let other people know why they should invest in that there's an opportunity for all elements of our community, particularly businesses, to back this, it's within their, it's a benefit to them to get behind us.
So I suppose in our sort of fundraisery jargon terms, we'd say case for support, wouldn't we? Your case for support is around the organisation and the difference you make, as opposed to, say, with writing for grants or bids around a particular project. It's like, we are marvellous, we are wonderful, what we do is amazing, we change these lives. Let me tell you about a life we changed, and why wouldn't you want to be part of that?
Yeah, I think that sums it up. It's not, I don't think it's about being complacent though. I think it's about always making sure that you are framing what you have as an opportunity for that donor or that corporate partner or potential corporate partner, but also really, I make sure I do is I know what they want and what they're looking for, so that it isn't just we're fabulous and absolutely everything that we do should be supported. It is a firm belief in what we do, but it's also knowing how you can frame what that is as an opportunity for the other party, to help them fulfill their purpose. But in order to do that, you need to know what their purpose is, and knowing that their purpose and their vision and values aligns with yours. I think that's something that's really important to me as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back to that a little bit later on, because I absolutely think that's crucial. You can't just go out and just say to everybody the same thing. You've got to tailor it as you would if you were writing a bid or something like that. You've got to tailor it for that individual business. But I think what a lot of people, I've got two questions that people tend to ask me who haven't done corporate fundraising before, and that's, how do I meet the businesses in the first place? And how do I know who I want to go out and meet? So I suppose they're the wrong way around. It's how do I know who I want to go out and meet first? Because there's just hundreds of businesses out there, even in a small town like where I live. There's hundreds of businesses that I could go and talk to. So how do I know which ones to talk to? And then how do I meet them? I might have a list of all the businesses I want to meet, but how do I actually then go and meet them? So what would you say to those two questions?
Yeah, I think I'd start by saying, specifically in this role, I've noticed over the years, I don't do sort of cold, speculative, unsolicited approaches to corporates. That any valuable partnerships that have come about for us have come about through links or through either some form of pre-existing relationship that was there, through having met somebody at an event, or having potentially a current corporate partner that you're working with at the moment, but you ask them perhaps to introduce you to their clients or their partners at their own events, but it comes through relationships for me. I don't feel particularly comfortable, or I don't feel like it's particularly valuable to do the cold approaches, because I think, like you've just said, you have to tailor your approach to that specific corporate or that specific individual, and you can't really do that unless you've known them for a little bit first, and that might just be a short time, but it might be that it's taken years for you to even get to a point where you've seen someone, perhaps a representative of a business that you think you'd like to get to know a bit better and perhaps work with, but you might have seen them at events on and off for a couple of years before you even sort of get close to inviting them to come and see your organisation or see what you do. And I think the point there is that it takes time, so that you can't sort of put targets in yearly budgets that say, right, well, you'll start going to these networking events, and then 6 months later, surely there's going to be some money there in the bank. It doesn't quite work like that. And what I've noticed specifically in the role here at the Booth Centre is that you have like your sort of stagnant years. So in those 5 years I've been here, you have a year or 18 months of building relationships, so you see that in the accounts, and then you have a year of uplift because the relationships you've built then come to fruition because you've spent the time on getting to know those representatives in those organisations. But in terms of how do I sort of get to meet people, I do go to networking events locally in Manchester, but I go to ones where I'm comfortable. I think there can be networking, there's all sorts of different types of networking, where some are for me and some just aren't for me. And I go to the ones where I feel comfortable, I feel like I've got something to say, I feel like I've got something to offer, and it's perhaps finding those right groups for you that suit your sector as well.
And the first thing you said was, somebody you might have met at an event. So I'm thinking specifically about 2 or 3 organisations I've met, and all their funding up to this point has come from grants. And they know a couple of people, so there's a solicitor's firm over the road that does some pro bono stuff for them. They don't do any networking at the moment. They just tend to sit in their office. That going to events and networking can be really scary if you've not done it before. You don't think you'll be comfortable in that situation, or you've heard some scare stories about networking. So, maybe you only know 1 or 2 businesses. So, in that sort of situation, would you try to define what your perfect business would look like?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, Amy. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop because my husband's just locked himself out, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is important. I think sometimes we do that subconsciously. So I think you can do it sort of as an on-paper exercise. But I think I perhaps do it often, but subconsciously, knowing that, working out what type of business you want to target, approach, and work with in the future. And I think for us, the primary thing has to be about aligned values, and then knowing that with
so
resource.
how do you find out if your values are aligned with theirs?
I think you get a feeling if you meet people, or if you hear about how staff morale, how people are within the company, but also research in news articles online. Reputation is a really important thing, I think, local reputation, but also I think you've got to think about your capacity as well within your team. So I know we're a small team, we've got limited capacity. There's no point looking for big partnerships, or looking for organisations where you know they're going to demand a huge amount of your time. If you started to do staff fundraising with them, you've got to think about what you can realistically offer back to that organisation if you were to start working with them. And then there's plenty of organisations and businesses to go around, so I think you need to know who you can't work with as much as who you could work with, in terms of your capacity to support them.
So do you have an ideal size of business that you try to work with?
We tend to work with small to medium-sized businesses who are...
How many staff would small to medium?
Staff of around sort of 100. Okay. But to be honest, I think, regardless of the numbers, I think currently I'm working with a number of organisations who the value is in that I've got the relationships with a few key people within the businesses who are driving forward the partnership and the fundraising, and it's knowing that you can develop a relationship with one person or two people, and knowing that they'll help you deliver what you need to achieve with that partnership, whether it be staff fundraising, volunteering, spreading your message, helping you with in-kind services, that type of thing. But if you don't have that link within the business, because you're only one person, you can't drive it forward internally. So it really, in that sense, it wouldn't matter if it was 500 or 100 or 50 staff members. It's building that relationship with that key person within the business, I think, is the important part.
Yeah, I certainly, years ago when I was doing corporate fundraising, we had a partnership with a business, and there was real synergy between our values and what they did and what we did. And the MD wanted us to work with them and put me in touch with someone. So I was the charity contact, and the person at the other end was the corporate contact, and she was just a blocker, and we just didn't get anywhere for 12 months. And then I don't know whether our MD had a word with their MD or what, but then she was moved and they put somebody else in place, and she was just a joy to work with, and she saw the benefits, and she was a marketeer, and she could see how things like having our logo on some new products for them would help them sell those products better. But she also saw the benefits of even the HR benefits of staff being more engaged and more motivated, and it just transformed the relationship, having that person change. Even though we had that support at the top, as you say, you've got to have that link in of somebody who really wants to do it, not just sees it as it's just an extra thing I've got to do. I'll meet with this charity fundraiser, but I'm not really going to do anything. So yeah,
definitely. And people move on as well. So people move on from their current workplace to a new workplace, and if they remember a good relationship with you and remember that you're going to make their job easier because you're going to deliver and help them with what they need to achieve on their CSR policy, they'll come back to you in a new place. And that's happened a number of times. And
I think an important thing for fundraisers to remember, which you've just alluded to, is often those people in the business have strategic objectives or key performance indicators, and if they deliver on those, they get a bonus. So actually you can help them hit their bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
Which can be not, obviously it's not a drive for everybody, but it can be a real drive for some people. Like, this is a really easy way for me to actually talk to 50 schools in the area, or help with homelessness in the area, or help with mental health issues in the area. I can say I've worked with 200 people because I'm supporting this charity, and that bit of the work I'm supporting hits that many people. So it's a really, I think sometimes fundraisers don't think about that sort of connection down the line, which is what you're talking about, can really help you as a fundraiser to be remembered.
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing that kind of sums up the way I work, I think, is about relationships and about leaving good impressions where you go, because it's a small world, and I think people, like I say, they'll remember the conversations they have with you and the passion that you have for your cause, and they'll hopefully keep that in mind when they're thinking, right, I've got to get 10 people out volunteering on the 4th of May because that's what's in my personal development plan. I know I'll give Amy a ring and see what we can do there together. And it's about sort of helping each other out. That tends to be the way things work.
Yeah.
Going back to your about how do I meet people or be introduced to new partners, I think I do try and find out where people are going to be. Perhaps they might be speaking at events, or like someone from an organisation that I'd like to find out more about might be speaking at a networking event. The networking event could be completely unrelated to our cause or our charity, but it might be a personal development session with corporates, and charities can become members, or they can join. And if I've been to things before where the key speakers are people I'm just interested in hearing about, but they work for businesses that I'd like to get to know. And just being there, saying thank you at the end, introducing yourself, and then linking up in some way after that. It's not a cold approach, because you've made that link and you've got something to say, rather than just saying, my charity's amazing and you need to come and visit, and can we have lots of money. You're saying, I really liked what you talked about, it really resonated with me, and leave it at that for a bit. They might not come back to you, but some might come back to you and say, thank you for your feedback, tell me a bit more about what you do. And then it starts from there.
And when you go to those sorts of events, how many other charity fundraisers are there doing that sort of approach?
Not that many, to be honest, and obviously that can be a good thing for the charities that are in the room, but it is growing. I think it is becoming more of a known approach to how to build relationships, specifically within some of the Manchester networks, which is good. It's got to be a good thing. But if you go to the specific ones where you are going to be perhaps the only charity in the room, you've got a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's sort of thinking more laterally or outside the box, or whatever you want to call it, in terms of how do I actually get to meet these people. And if I go where they are, maybe they're in their comfort zone, or maybe they're not if they're up on a platform and having to speak. And just because somebody's a senior manager or managing director of business doesn't necessarily mean they like speaking on a platform. So everybody, I would say, when they've done something like that, appreciates it when somebody comes up and says, I really enjoyed what you had to say, and specifically this particular thing really resonated with me, and I'm really interested on your views on that. Actually, that you do really make an impression when you do that sort of thing. And as long as it comes from a genuine place, it's not a case of, right, this is how I'm going to get to meet this person. There's sincerity behind it, that actually, I really do think that makes that connection. And as you say, then link up afterwards on LinkedIn or in some other way. That's a hugely powerful way of meeting people.
Yeah, I much prefer it to cold approaches to people I've never met before, because I feel like it's obvious what you're trying to do there, and you must be one in a long list of others that is doing that. and I think you've got to stand out in some way.
And I think particularly you have to stand out in some way when you're not one of the obvious causes.
Yes, yeah.
It can be a little bit more difficult to do. You have to work it that way rather than just saying we are, one of the big names which everybody recognises. It's about making your name known as well, which is more difficult when you're smaller or a less popular cause. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things you said was so you've identified some businesses you want to work with, so maybe you put a limit on it in terms of, I'm not talking about you personally, but sort of as a tip, sort of maybe we want to work with somebody with up to 100 employees who's in profit. So I usually do a little bit of a scout round on Companies House or on their annual report if I can, to see if they're in profit, because if they're not in profit, they're not going to be able to give you any money. But also, you said have a look at what they want and what the opportunity is. So can you just tell me a little bit more about how you do that then?
Yeah, I think when I get to know, say if I've been in and able to have a meeting with representatives at a new business, or I've perhaps done some research online, you do get to have a feel for what it is their CSR policy or their charitable approach is aiming at. And it could be at, predominantly to increase staff morale or to help with staff well-being, because they've got a new young workforce. The business that I was at recently has just completely changed the sort of proportion of their workforce who are young millennials, and it's traditionally been sort of older founders and families of the founders, where there's not been an interest in local communities investment at all. And now they've got a swathe of new young, this is a legal firm, new young lawyers, and the management team have got this problem. They need to, and because the young people within the business are saying, why don't we invest in our community? Why aren't we doing more? And for them, their purpose is to plug that gap. For others, it might be for positive PR. They might have had some reputational negative PR in the past, and they might be doing it predominantly for that. For others, it might be to build a relationship with other organisations you're working with. For others, it might be about reaching a brand new audience or growing a particular audience. So if there's things that you can do as a charity to help them fulfill their purpose, whatever it is you've kind of outlined it to be, you've got to frame that as an opportunity and package it up for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so some of that comes from your research online, so looking at any news that they publish on their website, or if they have actually got a CSR strategy, or if they publish their values, or how they talk about themselves. But again, I was with a charity last week and they were saying, we really don't know how to go and pitch to businesses. And I hate that word pitch, because I just think it makes us all think of Dragon's Den, and it's really scary. or The Apprentice, where they go and do that awful pitching to Asda and Morrison's and Sainsbury's to try and sell a product, and it's really cringeworthy. So I think that disadvantages anyway when we use that term. But they were saying, how do we know what to pitch to the business? And I said to them exactly what you said, look at their website. But then I also said, you just need to talk to them.
Yeah.
I agree. You don't necessarily, what you said about that legal firm, you didn't necessarily know that was what they wanted to overcome until you spoke to them, did you?
Yeah, and I wouldn't have known that from their publicity or what they put out there online. It is purely about an honest conversation between two people, saying, what do you need and what do you need? And the most valuable partnerships we've had over recent years have been the ones where the sort of lead, the driving force in the business, whether that be one of the partners or the marketing team or whoever you're working with, genuinely say to you, what is it you need? What are your top 3 priorities for your strategy, and how can we help you? And you say the same back to them. What are your top 3 priorities? Because you will be able to support them with some of them. You've got something to give as well. It doesn't have to just be a begging bowl where you're going to that business saying, please give to us. We've got nothing to give you back.
Yeah.
You've got a lot to give them back, and that's valuable, and you should protect it and only kind of give it to people and the organisations that do align with your values and where you do have a bit of a common purpose as well.
So have you had that where you maybe started to that initial stage, and then you thought, oh no, this isn't, our values don't align at all, or where it's been like, oh dear, I need to step back from this?
Yeah, it has happened, and I think it must happen to all fundraisers at some point within their career. And I think it's having the confidence to know, which isn't always easy, having the confidence to know when to turn an opportunity down, because everything is often framed to a small charity anyway as, you need this is an opportunity you can't turn down, and you would be stupid to. And you can learn to believe that, and it might be the targets that are sort of driving the feeling of, oh, we need to reach target by the end of the year, or the trustees are asking for this, or the trustees have said we need to work with this specific organisation. I think having a good relationship with your management team and your board, to know that you have the autonomy and ability to know when something isn't quite right, and that might threaten your driving values, which for me in my role is about primarily to support the people who use our service, and to protect the reputation of the organisation. And I think anything that threatens that, you need to know when to pull back, but you need to be given the autonomy to be able to do that, and that sometimes can be difficult.
But you also need, I think, there it sounds like you also need some kind of policies and processes and structures around it as well as the values that I know your organisation quite well, and I know those values, run like a golden ribbon right through the organisation in everything that you do, the way you talk about your beneficiaries, and so the way you treat people. So when you are talking to an organisation, you quite often would, if they really compromise that golden thread in terms of how they wanted to speak about your beneficiaries, or how they wanted to offer support to you, you would be able to have real clarity in saying no. But I think sometimes that isn't there in the same way in other organisations, and I think sometimes that's when it helps to have some policies in place as well. And I know you talked about ethics policy when we were discussing doing this session. Could you just give me a little bit of an idea of what kind of things you considered when you created your ethics policy?
Yeah, certainly. I think, as you say, having that on paper policy that is approved by all levels of the organisation is extremely important, because it is something for you to refer to when you do have to make those tough decisions. And it makes it non-personal as well, because it means you can say to supporters, donors, volunteers, actually, this isn't me saying no, this is the organisation saying no, and you can refer back to what's written in that policy. And the things that are included in it are things about how you will fundraise, so how you will go about fundraising, making sure that it's ethical, legal, honest, complies to the fundraising code of practice, but also within that some more subjective values around protecting the reputation of your brand, the reputation of the organisation as a whole, but also anything it says in black and white, anything that threatens the primary vision, mission and values of the organisation will not be considered and will be sort of refused or turned down. And I think, yeah, it just takes it out of your hands as an individual, because you just can refer back to a decision that is above your head. Ultimately, you might know it's wrong, and you might know that actually this doesn't feel quite right. I don't want to work with these people or this organisation, but having that conversation with them is difficult without something that is written and that is a policy and that is an organisation-wide approved message.
And how far into your work at the Booth Centre did you get the ethics policy?
2 years ago.
and did that come out of some difficult relationships, or how did that come about?
I think it came about through us growing, I think, and us growing, you become more, people are more aware of you as an organisation in the community, so more opportunities do come your way through that. And I think we'd grown the capacity of the staff team and the board to be able to focus on it, because I think the reality is that small organisations and small charities, you need some support to put these things in place and to be able to focus on them. And we'd been lucky to have the support of a sort of a strategic management consultant, and to be able to look at our strategic direction. And this was just one of the things that needed to be addressed. And it's great. It comes with any growth of any small organisation, I think, and it's an important thing to have in place, because as I say, the staff members feel it's less of a personal decision, less responsibility on them, where they can refer to something that is backed up by everybody. Yeah,
and I think some businesses, certainly had somebody recently say to me they'd gone to talk to a business, and all they really wanted was some positive PR, but they didn't actually want to do anything for it. And so I think sometimes that's quite a I don't know, it just feels morally corrupt that a business would use a charity to just get good PR, but without actually supporting the charity in any way, really, just saying they do. So I suppose, how would an ethics policy help in that sort of circumstance, or would that be more of a gut feel?
I think it does give you the reminder that it's got to be a mutually beneficial relationship. But I would say, kind of throwing that on its head a little bit, in that sometimes we could go too far with sort of the scrutiny around return on investment in partnerships, I think, because sometimes the value of a relationship where you feel like you're actually not getting very much at that time actually turns out, and it might be a couple of years down the line, that did turn into something. So I am a bit cautious as to not go too far down the road of always scrutinising decisions in the way of keeping referring to policies and procedures, and making sure that you're getting full benefit from everything, every interaction and engagement and relationship that you enter into. Because sometimes you do have to take a relationship where the power benefit or the value benefit is much more on the other side, but knowing deep down that this could lead to something actually sometimes, somewhere, as long as you're still sticking to your values and it doesn't drive you away from your vision and mission. Does that make sense? Or am I...
I'm just thinking that, for me, that's where the sort of intuition, knowledge, experience, creativity come into it. So that sort of more that emotional intelligence and those softer skills make corporate fundraising, to some people, you know, they think, oh, that's really tricky, because some of it is intuition, isn't it? I mean, what you've just said there, some of that is intuition.
Yeah, I think so. There is, I feel like when we came to sort of talk about this, I was a bit sort of skeptical, because I think I wouldn't say I have all the answers, or that I haven't sort of an expertise really in this, and I do tend to go with my gut a lot of the time. So I don't think that's probably not a helpful thing for most people. But I think as long as you have a good relationship with those people who you report to, your manager or your board, and if not, so try and build that, because they're the people you have these discussions with, where you just sit down and go, well, what do you think about this? And I look at all the options, but the decision-making criteria needs to be around, does this fit with us and our values?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where corporate fundraising, you have to have structure, you have to have process, you have to have a database of some sort so that you're recording who you're speaking to and when. But then also you have to have that side, which is that creativity around, like you said, developing opportunities. So somebody comes to you and says, look, you know, we've got a load of millennials that have started working here, and the culture of the organisation's just changed completely. We've kind of got these two sets of people, the millennials who all want us to work in the community, and then our older directors, partners, who maybe are, I don't know, potentially more focused on income. And how do you get those two things to work? And for you, that was okay. That would have got your creative juices flowing around ideas to help to work with them. That would, as you said, would be mutually beneficial. So you're going to get something out of it in terms of income, or people going to your sleep out, or volunteering, or I don't know, fundraising internally, and they're going to get that sort of sense of community. But you at that point have to kind of put your thinking cap on and go, okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is knowing what you have in your toolkit. So I know that in my toolkit of things that I have to offer people, I have a fantastic organisation that is, the minute you sort of walk in or meet it or engage with it, you get this feeling that yes, we're doing something good and supporting people. But also I've got the benefit that I can welcome people in to volunteer from corporates. So, and I do realise that is such a valuable thing, because as soon as people can come in and get stuck in and volunteer, they learn a lot about the organisation and about how we are helping people to change their lives. And you can't really convey that in any other way than people just coming to see it.
But you also ask people to make a donation with that, don't you? I think that's quite an interesting model as well.
Yeah, we do. We have a corporate team volunteering program where we invite, we actually respond to inquiries, because I think the demand for businesses to go out and volunteer is quite high, but there are only a small number of charities that I can actually find it an easy thing to offer. So we are in a fortunate position where we're able to say yes to those organisations that are able to offer us more than just volunteering. So they're able to commit to taking part in a fundraising event, to collecting valuable items such as, you know, hygiene items or food that we need, but also perhaps corporate donations, and they commit to that at the beginning, so at the point of inquiry. And it is important, because you're saying at the beginning of that relationship, yes, you can come in and take the opportunity to come in, and you're framing it as an opportunity for them, because it is team building. You are ticking their CSR box by allowing them to come in and get to know your organisation and volunteer. But you're also saying, yes, you can do that, and we need it, and we welcome it, and it's really beneficial. But at the same time, please also go on and do other things for us and fundraise for us, or make a donation at the same time. And most people get that, and most people are happy with that. And I think if there are businesses that can't do that, or aren't able to because they're already committed to another charity, or they don't have the budget, then I think, you know, that's fine. But it does mean that you're not working at a loss, sort of ticking somebody else's box, and not sort of benefiting your own goals.
Yeah. That's a really good point, that you're not working at a loss, because it does cost you money to have volunteers in, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's the time you put into the preparation, to briefing, the communications, to looking after them on the day. Obviously, they can't be sort of left unsupervised. You need to support them. You need to make sure they have a good experience. There's also a lot of hidden costs as well around building a different internal staff culture, because it might be that within the rest of the staff team, so the operational side of the charity, that the rest of the team aren't really keen on that. You know, it might seem like another job for them to be looking after people who've come in from businesses for the day to help. But so it's actually, it takes a long time to change that culture and to sort of educate teams in the value of that, so that there's a longer term value to corporate volunteers coming in. And when that shift changes within the internal team, and people start to welcome them and show them a good time and give them a good experience, the value goes up, because they go away having had a good experience, and they go away then and fundraise more, or they join your mailing list, or they follow you on social media, or they tell their friends about you or their partners. But if they have a hostile experience and they aren't sort of welcomed by the rest of the staff team, because my team's only small, we're only 1 and 2 people. If they don't have a good experience, that could be reputationally quite damaging. So yeah, it's important. The costs are quite high, because you have to do a lot of work around it.
Yeah, and it kind of does a disservice calling it volunteering, doesn't it, almost, because so many people say, well, volunteering's free, and it's like, well, no, actually, and you just described a cost I hadn't even thought of, that hidden cost of changing the culture internally, which, must be, well, as you said, it takes quite a long time to do that, but when that shift happens, you can almost see the increase in your income and engagement with your corporate partners. That's really interesting. Well, I wanted to move on before we finish to some scary things that a lot of people are quite afraid of. We've already touched on one, which is the ethics policy. And that's something for your trustees to create, really, not you as a fundraiser, although you'd have input into it. Contracts and commercial participatory agreements. Do you do anything with those? Do you?
We haven't. No, we haven't really. Not in my role. Currently, we haven't.
So you don't have contracts with your corporate partners around what you expect and what they expect?
Well, sorry, going back, actually, we do in terms of sponsorship agreements, and rather than calling them contracts, we call them agreements, because they're things you kind of come up with together.
Yeah.
So we've only in the last few years really started to introduce any model of sponsorship, because we're quite a small organisation. We do have one big event, sponsorship, mass participation event each year that accounts for about 18% of our income now. And obviously one of the things we constantly have to do is try and keep costs down for running these types of events. So we wanted to look for a headline sponsor for the event, and the event had grown over the sort of first since it started actually in 2010, but it'd grown over the time I'd been there, enough for me to think this is an opportunity, and there would be demand for somebody or a business putting their name to this event, because of the amount of people that now get involved in it. So yeah, we drafted a sponsorship agreement around what we would provide for that corporate sponsor, and what they would do to sort of uphold the agreement on their side around supporting the event and being present at the event and that type of thing, and then put that out there and attracted a headline sponsor for the event, who's now doing it in the second year, which is great.
Yeah, reduces your outgoings, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that covering the event cost, but also helping to bring their clients and their partners to the event, because it benefits them to be seen as the sponsor of the event too. And
how did you come up with that contract?
I think I used templates of other organisations, to be honest, and asked other fundraisers that I know, and possibly yourself as well, about what they think should be included, and drafted it from there.
Okay. And I suppose quite a useful thing is if you've got some lawyers who do support you, you can always ask them to have a quick look over something, can't you, and make sure it's works.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got people on our board of trustees who are able to run their eyes over things like that and to be able to advise us, which is great. And I think if we didn't, we'd be able to go out to our partners and ask them for support as well.
Yeah. And I think with those contracts, there often are templates online, or you can, fundraising chat's great, isn't it? If you want some support, you can ask something, if anybody's got something, that works really well. And I think Institute of Fundraising might have some, I'm not sure, about sort of contracts and memorandum of understandings. People sometimes use those for those corporate partnerships.
Yeah, certainly. I've definitely used the Institute of Fundraising for resources like that in the past. Yeah, it's a good starting point, and then personalise it to your own needs.
And I know sometimes people think, oh, is that really necessary? But for me, something like a memorandum of understanding, which isn't a legal document, it just lays out, and you probably have something like this, you just don't call it this, like, you will do this, so we will offer you 3 volunteer days over the next 18 months. You will take part in our such and such sleep out, or you'll take part in the Manchester 5K, and you'll aim to raise this much money. And so it sort of lays out what you've agreed when you've had those meetings where you've sort of said, what are our priorities and what do we want to get from this?
Yeah, certainly. It gives them confidence as well that you're taking this seriously. I think that's really important, and that you know what you want from the relationship at the beginning, and you're also committing to be giving them something of value right from the beginning, and it's all very clear, so nothing can be misinterpreted, and it's something you can use and go back to in the future if things don't come to fruition. If they say they agree to do X number of posts on their social media, or they agree to recruit 5 of their partners to be involved, or something like that, and you could say when we went put this agreement together, we agreed we'd both do this. Is there anything I can do to help us get there, type thing? And that likewise they can remind you as well about what you said you'd do.
Yeah, because we're all so busy as well, and if you've got a number of contracts going on, it's difficult to remember. And also, you said earlier on, people move on to other organisations, and potentially the fundraiser moves on. So without something left behind saying this is what we agreed, then nobody really knows. And I've seen that happen so many times where people go, our fundraiser's left, and we know there was a partnership with this business, but they can't remember what we agreed, and we can't find anything, and it's just
definitely. It just makes it more professional, I think, and making sure that it doesn't matter if that your member of staff moves on or leaves the organisation or is off for any period of time, that the service the partner is receiving remains the same, because you've got the background of the agreement there for people to refer to, and technically anyone could pick that up and resume the level of service there with that partner. So it just makes it seamless, really, and they'll remember that, and they'll either continue to support you or not, perhaps on the basis of that. So it is quite important.
Yeah. And it's also that little, like you said in a meeting, it's that little reminder of so where are we with this? Are we progressing towards it? Or, as you said, you've got a lovely way of putting it, how can I help you to achieve that? It's a really nice way of putting it. It's far less direct, and I would be like, so how are you progressing with this? Yours is much nicer. So, it can make a good basis for those regular catch-ups as well, can't it, as to how things are progressing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Amy, we've been on nearly 50 minutes now.
We've been rambling.
Before we started, you said you'd had a think about, and this is what I'd kind of like to use to finish, really, why you love corporates. So you gave me a really nice explanation of why you like corporates.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really identified it as my most passionate area of fundraising, but I think it is because it's got a high ROI. So for me, it covers all the other income streams too. So for the work that you put in to developing a corporate relationship or a corporate partnership, you get quite a lot more than just that back. And I do find that rewarding. So what I mean by that is that you are working with individuals, so often they go on to donate personally, so you pick in the individual giving box there as well. They attend your events, they may sign up to your mailing list, which means even perhaps after the partnership ends, you're still in contact with those individuals. They could become volunteers outside of their working hours. They may be the biggest ambassadors for your campaigns because they've got to know your key messages. They've got to understand your key strategies and what your organisation is about. So they carry that banner for you going forward. They may become your trustees. They could follow you on social media. They may become your major donors, and then they may become your legacy pledges of the future. But that is kind of ticking all the boxes put through corporate fundraising, and that's why I think I love it. Yeah.
And because you're in a small organisation, you have that pleasure of working across all those income streams. You're not in those silos of, you can't talk to them about the events because that's the events team, and and then I think you do get the most out of that relationship, as you say, because you can just touch on all those areas, and it makes it so varied as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It keeps it interesting, and you're not just working on the same things all the time. And opportunities come from nowhere, and they come out of places where you weren't perhaps even looking for opportunities. That's why I think I find it so interesting and rewarding. And it's about relationships and people giving to people, because they want to know you're there, you're going to look after them, and you're going to really get to know them, and they get to know you, and then things come from that.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we'll finish it, because I think your joy and passion for not only your organisation but for corporate fundraising really comes across when you speak about it. You can hear that it's, you really think it through and you connect, but at the heart of it is the whole relationship thing, that relationship with the corporates and the individuals there, but also the relationship with your board and your founder and your CEO and your beneficiaries. So I can see why you love corporate fundraising, because you bring that, not seeing corporates as just these big shiny offices. You see it as a lot of individuals, and that's what sort of why it shines through that you love doing that. There's loads more we could talk about on corporates, but hopefully that will have given people a little bit of an idea of, if you haven't got any corporate relationships at the moment, how you can start, and how you can start in a less scary way than cold calling, because I agree with you, Amy. I do not do cold calling, and because that scares the bejeevers out of me. But that whole building relationships from what you've got, and going out there and networking so you meet people, I think that really helps people to understand that it's more comfortable than having to just get on the phone and cold call. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving up nearly an hour and a half of your day to talk to me today. That's been really helpful.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to know more about corporate fundraising, I know that Simon does stuff on corporate fundraising, and if you're based in the northwest of England, I do stuff on corporate fundraising. And thank you, Simon, for letting me host today. And Amy and I have actually quite enjoyed this, haven't we, Amy? It hasn't been as bad. So for anybody, you're welcome. So for anybody else out there, step outside your comfort zone and have a go at something that you're not comfortable with, and it won't be as bad as you thought it would be. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't, whatever. You're big enough to make your own decisions.
Hey, this is Simon Scriver.
And this is Nikki Bell.
We are running a virtual fundraising conference on November 19th. It's called Fundraising Everywhere, and you can find it at fundraisingeverywhere.com.
There's some amazing speakers that we've got lined up for you. We've got some names on there that you will be familiar with and some speakers that you may not have heard before, but all of them will be sharing amazing fundraising methods that are proven to work, and they will be teaching us how to do that in our own charities.
We've tried to make it really affordable for all organizations, but for small charities, it is completely free. So go look at it at fundraisingeverywhere.com, register now, join us. It will be accessible, it will be affordable, and it is amazing.
Yes.